It started on a quiet stretch of farmland in the south, where life moved slow and steady until the wrong people picked the wrong man to mess with. Big Mike, a black farmer with a kind smile and a belly full of laughter, had traded his Navy SEAL boots for muddy work boots years ago. Most folks just knew him as the fat farmer with the good peaches, and that's exactly how he liked it. He kept to himself, loved his animals, and helped neighbors without ever asking for anything in return. But when a local gang spotted his land and mistook his silence for weakness, things took a dark turn. They wanted a cut of his crops or worse, his land. They showed up one evening, loud and cocky, thinking they were dealing with just another soft target. What they didn't know was that Big Mike had once crawled through war zones and led missions in the dead of night. That behind the gentle eyes was a man who had stared danger in the face more times than he could count. As threats started turning into action, Mike's past instincts began to wake up. He didn't want to fight, but he wouldn't let anyone take what he had built. The tension was rising, and the gang had no clue the storm they were about to walk into. They thought they were dealing with a farmer. They didn't know they were stepping onto the battlefield of a trained warrior. And he was ready. Before the gang showed up, Big Mike's life was quiet and honest. He had bought the land 10 years ago with savings from his Navy pension, wanting nothing more than peace and purpose after years of chaos overseas. He planted vegetables, raised goats and chickens, and ran a small fruit stand by the road. Locals trusted him, not just for his sweet corn and fresh eggs, but because he really listened. He wasn't the type to boast or bring up his past. Most people had no idea he used to lead elite rescue missions in war zones. That part of his life felt like another lifetime, one he had buried beneath the soil he now worked. But trouble always seems to find peace. It started with missing tools, strange tire tracks near the edge of his land. Then came the threats, quiet at first, left in notes, then louder. A young man from the gang showed up asking questions, acting friendly but too nosy. Mike saw the signs. He'd seen that kind of probing in enemy territory, when people smile with their mouths but not their eyes. What made it worse was that the sheriff's office seemed to shrug it off. It's probably just kids, they told him, but Mike knew better. He could feel the shift in the air, like before a storm. These men wanted something, and they didn't care how they got it. But what they didn't understand, what no one did yet, was that Big Mike wasn't afraid. He was just waiting. The gang wasn't just a bunch of aimless troublemakers. They had a leader, Dre Sharp Lean, and always 2 steps ahead. Dre had his eyes set on expanding, and Mike's land sat right where he wanted to build a route for his growing operation. He figured the farmer was an easy mark. An old man with a soft middle, alone and quiet. No one would come looking if things got messy. But Dre misjudged one thing. Mike wasn't alone. Not really. Across the fence line lived Clara, a retired teacher who had been friends with Mike since the day he moved in. She noticed the same things he did. Strange cars passing slow at night, unfamiliar faces loitering by the back road. She'd seen it before when her cousin had lost his store to protection fees in the next county. Clara warned Mike, but he simply nodded, told her to keep her porch light on, and check in every evening. She didn't know why he stayed so calm, but it made her nervous. Meanwhile, Dre's youngest recruit, Jamal, started having second thoughts. He'd grown up on stories about men like Big Mike, men who served their country and came home just wanting peace. Jamal didn't like the way Dre talked about him, like he was nothing. Jamal's own grandfather was a veteran, and something about Mike reminded him of that quiet strength. But Dre wasn't backing off. His crew was getting bolder, planning something bigger, and Mike, he wasn't running. He was watching, waiting, and remembering everything. The pressure was building like a storm ready to break. Every night, Mike heard things, footsteps too light to be animals, the soft hum of engines idling just beyond the tree line. His motion lights flickered more than usual, and his goats had started getting spooked for no reason. He didn't panic though. He had quietly reinforced his barn doors, moved certain tools closer to the house, and began sleeping a little less, always alert. The old instincts were back, sharper than ever. Jamal started keeping his distance from the gang's late-night meetings. He knew something was coming, something bad. Dre had stopped talking and started planning. He'd mapped the farm, figured out the blind spots, and told his crew it was time to move in. "We're taking it all," Dre said, eyes cold. "The crops, the tools, the land. He'll hand over the keys, or we'll take them." Nobody spoke up, not even Jamal. Clara noticed it too. She watched from her kitchen window as shadowy figures moved near Mike's fence, pretending to be lost or taking shortcuts. She called Mike every evening now, her voice tight with worry. "You sure you don't want me to call somebody?" she asked. Mike answered like always, calm, quiet, firm. "Let 'em come," he said softly. "Just let 'em try." That night, the wind picked up. Dre's crew gathered in silence, their headlights off, moving slow down the dirt road. They thought they were hunting a harmless man, but Mike wasn't prey. He was prepared, and he wasn't alone. As Dre's crew crept closer under the cover of darkness, a pair of eyes watched them from the tree sides that didn't belong to Mike. Unbeknownst to everyone, Mike had made a quiet call a few nights earlier, not to the sheriff, but to an old friend from the Navy, Rico, lean and quiet. had driven through the night with no questions asked? He didn't need details. If Mike said it was serious, then it was. Rico set up camp in the woods behind the barn, hidden, silent, and ready. The gang moved in from 3 directions, thinking they had the upper hand. One of them tried cutting the back fence, but the wire was electrified now. Nothing lethal, but enough to send him stumbling back with a shout. The sound broke the silence, and for a moment, the crew froze. Mike, standing by the barn, heard it and didn't flinch. He glanced toward the trees where Rico would be, then turned on the floodlights. Bright beams lit the entire field like it was midday, but that wasn't the twist. Across the road, a black SUV had been parked for almost an hour. Inside was someone Dre didn't know was watching Jamal's older brother, Deshaun, a city cop who had been trying to pull Jamal away from gang life for months. Jamal had finally reached out that morning. Just one text. Asterisk, it's happening tonight. I think it's bad. Asterisk now. Deshaun was watching everything unfold through binoculars, his hand tight on the radio, and the moment was almost here. The first loud noise was the snap of boots against gravel, one of Dre's guys tripping in the spotlight, drawing everyone's eyes. Mike stepped forward, calm and steady, holding nothing more than a heavy flashlight in his hand. You boys, sure you want to do this? He asked, his voice low but carrying. Dre stepped out from behind the barn, trying to act in control, trying not to show the shake in his hands. This ain't your call, he said. You give it up, or we take it, that's it. But before he could move closer, Rico emerged from the shadows behind them, silent as a ghost. In one swift motion, he disarmed the closest crew member and had him on the ground. The others scattered for a second, confused, yelling until floodlights from across the road flared to life. And Deshaun stepped out of his SUV, badge out, gun holstered, but visible. Nobody moves, he said, voice sharp. This ends now. The gang panicked. 2 of them ran, only to be met by deputies pulling up behind them, called in by Deshaun the moment Jamal gave him the go-ahead. In seconds, what was meant to be a takeover turned into a complete collapse. Dre tried to reach for something under his coat, but Mike was already there faster than any of them expected. One twist of the arm, and Dre hit the dirt dot as the dust settled. Jamal stepped out from the shadows, hands raised. I told you, he wasn't just a farmer, he said quietly, but the real twist. Mike looked at Deshaun and nodded slowly. They weren't the only ones watching this place, he said. Someone else was here last night, someone worse, and they're still out there. The next morning, the farm looked calm, against sunlight breaking through the trees, goats grazing like nothing ever happened. But for Mike, Clara, Jamal, and Deshaun, everything had changed. Deputies had hauled Dre and most of his crew off overnight, and Jamal, though shaken, stayed behind to help clean up. Mike had offered him a simple job fixing the fence, feeding the animals. No judgment, no lectures, just work and space to think. Jamal accepted with a quiet nod. Clara brought over coffee and pie, like always, but hugged Mike a little longer than usual. You've still got people watching out for you, she said, wiping her eyes. Mike just smiled, and I always will. Deshaun promised to keep an eye on the town, especially with Mike's final warning still hanging in the air. Someone else had been near the property before Dre's crew ever showed up. Footprints, cigarette butts, a broken wire deeper in the woods. Whoever it was, they never made a move, but Mike knew that kind of patience. That kind of silence didn't belong to amateurs. Still, for now, the farm was safe. Mike returned to his crops. Rico headed back out on the road, and peace, however temporary, returned. What stood out most wasn't the fight, but the people, neighbors, friends, even strangers who chose to stand together when things got hot.